Guys.
Good morning.
Morning, Michael. Feeling better?
I'm getting there. Did anybody else other than Bob and me get sick after our meeting last week?
I mean, I was
So
sick.
it's either you or me. Well, my wife just got sick and my son, so I'm
Sure.
better.
Are you talking like stomach sick or cold?
I just had a miserable
Flu?
cold.
I was in bed all day on Wednesday for my birthday.
Oh, that's right.
With the,
With the snow day.
yeah, it was, I mean, literally, I had not had a cold that bad. I mean, I went and got.
So you all carriers now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel better. Well, I will say, I never, it was one of those illnesses that I didn't have a lot of symptoms, but boy, did I need to lay down.
Yeah, it just like knocked me
Yeah.
bad.
But it was just like a really, really bad cold.
Yeah,
I haven't-
I thought I had the flu and I
It
went
was
and
the
got
flu.
tested and they were like,
I haven't been
no.
down like
And then
that.
I felt better, much better like the next day. So
Right.
it didn't last as long as the flu, but.
I start feeling bad. I mean, I didn't feel great Wednesday. I felt okay, but I said, I'm so glad that
Snow.
because I had a jam-packed Wednesday. And I said, it's all canceled. There's nothing I can do about it. So I just laid low, and then Thursday I came in, whatever. But by Thursday night, man, that thing had kicked my butt, and I was down Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I finally went to the doctor yesterday and said, you just got to tell me, do I have the flu? Because of course I was going to get all the I told you so, because I've never gotten a flu shot.
Yeah.
And she said, no, you don't have the flu. You're on the mend. Your chest is clear. You're not contagious, except my eyes have been running. So she gave me some eye drops, and just to make sure it didn't turn into junk. But man, I never get sick. And if I get sick, I get a cold like that. It's a day, and then
Right.
I am so grateful though. I was supposed to be at the leading RE conference this past week, and Chris and I decided not to go. I would have been miserable in Las Vegas. Oh, I mean, flying out there and
It didn't sound like you had a ton of warning, but what I found, if I take airborne, if I'm starting to feel like I'm getting a cold, I'll just OD on that.
yeah, and we've been using this thing called Combat,
Probably same.
which is a health, Rebecca's health thing with
I've never heard of it.
It's got elderberry.
Probably echinacea, I think a lot of them have in it.
Yeah.
Zinc.
It's called
Zinc.
Combat.
And that stuff's good to take
Cold
in the
eats.
morning before you travel, when you go
Right,
there, you
yes,
drink that
yeah.
stuff, yeah.
But I found I've been able to, if I feel one coming on, I just start
Yeah,
cracking
and
that
that's
stuff. And maybe it's psychological, but it works.
Well, and what's really interesting is Ben, my son-in-law, got the flu. Then his son got the flu. And so the doctor put Dottie on Tamiflu. I did say to her on the weekend, I said, why didn't you tell me to go on Tamiflu?
You could have gotten just a little bit of some,
I
yeah.
said, why didn't you? And she goes, you're just so adamant about the fact, no flu shots and that kind of thing. I just didn't think you'd do it. I said, do you remember a couple of years ago? And of course, this is recorded. I don't think she ever watches any of these. But anyway, this is a timeout, folks. We're doing a little medical stuff for you. I said, remember a couple of years ago you got the flu? And Dr. Rose put me on Tamiflu. She said, yeah. I said, I would have gone on. I mean, I'm around those grandkids as much as you are. Oh, not quite as much, but we just didn't think about it. I should have just gone on because she didn't have to go in. He just prescribed it for her. And I should have just gone on it.
Does that mean, I've never taken that. Does it make a difference?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, for sure.
It cuts down the time period apparently about half.
You either don't get it or if you get it, it's much. And that's what they said about the flu shot as well.
Yeah.
And I've always been, I've never had the flu. Why do I want to introduce it to my body? My body's doing just fine fighting it. But I did say to the doctor on Monday, it wasn't my regular doctor. She was great though. I said to her, would you tell Mark when you see him that I now understand what he means about at your age? I will get a flu shot the next time because this thing kicked my butt and it was just a cold. And I was down for 3 days. So I said, I hear you.
I think colds are, again, I haven't had the flu for quite a while, but I find some colds are really bad,
I'm sure.
It's not sniffles.
No,
Right,
no,
people
it's a
say, I
respiratory,
got
all
a
the
cold.
infection.
When you get the real cold,
Yeah.
I find that's, well, anyhow, I'm sorry if I was the,
Well, that was, he
Whatever they
and I
call
went back and forth.
Typhoid Mary.
yeah.
He and I went back and forth yesterday about that, and he goes, I said, do you think it was me? He said, oh, you never blame the boss. And I said, what did I see about that? Something about, some people might not think the same way, but,
Sure, probably Lysol wipes.
well, we must have something. Sure, something happened, so. All right, so, we're moving, into,
We got a new handout today, or is this
It's the same,
Okay.
it's the same. We're to number 3, that's it right there, right?
So bottom of the first page, really?
Yeah, I want to just sort of back up a little bit in regards to 3, because as we go into 3, I thought it'd be good to just kind of, to share a few things in regards to when people say, well, won't you reduce your commission? And I want to just give you some of my thoughts on that, and certainly want to hear your thoughts, but I think it's good for you to, when you get to this paragraph and fill this thing out, and they start asking about the fees and how can they be discounted and can they be discounted and that kind of thing. There are all sorts of different ways that conversation can go, right? And interestingly enough, and probably part of it was because I didn't feel well, I had a conversation with a broker in, well, there's a very good friend of mine who we worked with together, and she has a townhouse out in Crozet that she wants to rent. And she called and said, hey, can you give me a call? Nothing important, just want to run something by you. I said, sure. So I called her up and I said, what's up? How can I help? And she said, I was just curious as to how low you think your agent would go in getting paid to handle my rental. And I said to her,
Is she kidding?
no, she was dead serious. And I said to her, I said, pretty much the same thing. I said, you're kidding me, right? This is what we do for a living. And yet it's your property now. And I know how she trains. And yet it's your property. So, oh, but I'm, hey, Sean. I said, I'm going to, and bottom line, she is going to do everything. She does the lease. She does all those kind of things. And, I basically just said, I just can't believe you're asking the question, but bottom line is commissions are negotiable, and you can reach out to somebody and say, this is what I'm wanting, and are you willing to do it? And so, basically this one, it looks like all it needs to do is it needs to get put in the MLS, and once you get, somebody wants it, you're just handing it off to the broker, and you're not going to do anything else. So, but the point being is, even in that situation, I'm just like, this is a person that, is in the industry. I know how she trains her people, and yet when it comes down to her own place, she wants. So the point of all this is that there is the pressure to do it. And how you have thought about it and what your response is going to be needs to be thought about and practiced prior to answering the question. Because if you just go in there cold turkey, especially if you're new, I'm sure if somebody called you tomorrow and said, I want to list my house, and you're going in there cold turkey, and somebody says, well, what about commission? If you don't already have that thought process in place, just the hesitation is almost like they've won. Just that, go ahead, Bob, I'm close the door.
And I'm actually living this with my in-laws, so I'm dealing with it real life. So if I could, I'd back up a little bit, because what they really asked me, which I was probably more comfortable with the question you're posing than the one they asked me, which is, what's your fee?
Okay.
And where I struggle is this whole idea of price fixing. Is, I don't, what I struggle with is it's 6%, and it's something other than the industry standard.
Right.
I guess the answer is, this is Roy Wheeler's fee structure is we charge 6%. Is that the right answer?
Great question, and the way I would answer it is exactly what you said, except I'd add one more thing to it. Roy Wheeler has made the decision due to its marketing and the way that we go about handling people's properties. We have made the decision that our normal listing commission is 6%. And one of the reasons for that, we get to the form, if you should decide to work with me, is that immediately 3% of that is being offered out to another broker. And I think that's really important thing for people to understand. that it's not 6% coming to us. And we'll talk more about that, but immediately, we're gonna offer 3% out to, Sherrod, let me think,
Here, we go.
Logan, you go that way, Sherrod, you go that, we wanna make sure the camera.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine, you're fine.
I'm fine.
Yeah, just move over toward me. Yep, we're in good shape, that's perfect.
So it is okay to say that Roy Wheeler's
Absolutely, because you, I mean,
fee
and
structure is
even,
6%.
and just another example, you all can talk about it amongst yourselves, because you're with the same company. You can't talk about it with other realtors in other companies, and where you see it oftentimes, I'm on the MLS committee at CAR, and we get talking about broker compensations and things like that. We have to be very careful about what's said in that room, because the last thing you want to do is be put in a position where you were someplace where a conversation amongst other brokers happened, and they said something about.
Yeah, I worked for a guy who went to jail, Tommy Carruthers. You remember?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. for
Got out
sure.
of a meeting, brokered meeting, said, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to 7%.
Yeah.
Walked out.
Yeah.
And they chased him, bound him, put him in jail.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's important. In fact, it's interesting, and or not. Don't get scared. Or as we say in my family, don't be scared. It's so important that even in the policies of how you handle committee work, whether locally or state level, you are, if something like that happens, you are to make a disturbance. Literally, like they use an example of dropping a dictionary on the table and saying, I'm not in this conversation, I'm leaving, so that everybody remembers that you did that. You know, that you absolutely, I'm cutting it off right here, and I'm out of here. You guys do whatever you want to do, but I'm out of here. But important thing is that you can say to a seller, this is what we charge, and this is why. And one of the first things that really makes a difference, that softens it, is this whole aspect of, we're going to offer 3% out to other brokers. And I will tell you that there are companies out there that don't. And when they don't, we're talking about commissions. They don't, when they don't, it can be a disservice to you. So what you're doing is, one, you're telling them what your fee is, but then you're also already cutting it in half, so that that they aren't thinking the big number anymore. This is another thing when you talk to a for sale by owner, and you are trying to list them, and they ask you, well, what are you going to charge me? The first question you ask them is, if I was an agent bringing you a buyer, would you be willing to pay me a commission? And they say, yes, how much? 3%. That's what you want to hear, because now you're only talking about 3% with them. They've already said they're going to pay them 3%. So now all you're doing is by providing what you are going to do. It's about 3%. So you've already agreed to 3%. Now you're going to have 3% more. 1, you're going to be represented. 2, you're going to have somebody negotiating for you. 3, there's going to be marketing. Right.
Let's talk, can you get a little more specific? So, you know, I guess as I face this, and I haven't gotten into it yet, but, you know, we have a split, obviously, and different people around the table have different arrangements. But in general, my mindset is the portion I don't get is going to market.
Right.
Is that a fair thing to throw out on the table? But
Yeah.
hey, I think, you know, when you talk about the 3% that's remaining for the listing side, approximately a third of that goes into advertising and promotion. Is that grossly inaccurate?
No, and in fact, I'll make a note to remember. I have a friend, Joyce Shoemake, who works along Foster up in Northern Virginia, and I got to figure out. I know we've used it before. I got to find it, but she has a pie chart that she literally draws. She draws in front of the client a pie, and there's half listing, half this, and then she talks about errors and omissions insurance, marketing, lights on, printers, copiers, blah, blah, blah. She itemizes all these things so that they can see that only some of this is going in my pocket, right?
You mentioned.
Right. And so it's really important part that I'm not getting all this money, right? This is above. And what's even more important, and especially if you've been in the business for a while, you're paying for my experience. When you're going to go to an attorney for something small, you might choose to use whoever. But if your daughter, which happened to me, was in a car accident at 16 and was charged with driving with the intent to injure, that's a pretty serious offense. It's a dumb, vertically challenged state trooper. Seriously, I mean, this guy, when I got there, I could have been put in jail because I was so angry at the way he had treated my daughter. I wasn't going to, whoever. I went to my sister's attorney and said, who do I get who understands this type of traffic scenario? And she put me in touch with somebody who heard the story before, but she put me in touch with somebody. I was so frustrated with the guy because I felt like he just didn't care about how serious this was. But what I didn't realize is this was like rolling out of bed for him because he'd been doing it for years. He literally got her off with no court, not even court, and she was guilty of rear-ending an Accord that rear-ended an Accord that rear-ended another Accord. I mean, literally 3 Accords in a row, accordion. I mean, honest, it's a joke, but it's really serious. Boom, 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 nobody injured on the Dulles Highway coming back to Ruston. And she just was a kid, and the cars were going really fast in this lane, and it was one of those optical illusion things. Next thing she knew, that car was on her. And the state trooper he must have had a bad day. He told her she was driving a 2,000-pound killing machine, and she didn't understand, and she shouldn't have been on the road. Anyway, he got off on technicalities, on the fact that the guy didn't have any witnesses there, so everything the state trooper tried to say was secondhand information. And he asked for a continuance. Well, sorry, as of July 1st, in Fairfax County Traffic Court, it was like July 13th. Oh, wait, it was spring. It doesn't matter. As of April 1st, you have to ask for a continuance before you come into the courtroom. Whereas before you could ask for it any time. 10 days earlier, we'd have been cooked. But because the attorney knew that, he objected and said, and the judge said, you're actually right. And I wish you could have seen Katie that morning because the judge said, you can't corroborate your blah, 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 so this is over, all blah, 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 blah. And Katie just sat there. I'm sitting in the back because the only person could be in the room now. That's different than when I was a kid. You got a traffic court, you got to watch everybody going up until it was your turn. And now it's just the attorney, the judge, the transcriber, and the guardian doing the next situation. And I'm sitting there and going, wait, what just happened? Because I knew she should have gotten something, right? And the judge leaned over the bench and said to her, sweetie, you're free to go. And Katie hugged it. We didn't wait she hugged the attorney. I didn't wait and say hello, goodbye. I walked out. And we literally got around the corner. We took off out of the courthouse because I didn't want the guy to change his mind. But the point being was that guy could roll out of bed and do that because of his experience. That's worth something, and you have to be able. But again, you have to be willing, and not willing. You need to be ready to use that and to communicate it in a way that the person, that makes sense.
I spent 14 years in a business where people hammering you on fees or trying to was common. And I would disagree a little bit with the approach because the first time I had a shoot, somebody asked me about my fee and I immediately got defensive about it, almost doing what you were doing, outlining the costs and all that stuff. And the person at the end of the conversation goes, I was just asking you what it was.
No, and that's
and I will say, so the first thing I mean, pretty much if you asked me for a discount, you're never gonna get it.
Right.
Frankly, I had people that I gave discounts to, but that was not because they asked me. But basically, I just said what it was. Never lost any business because of it, and more times than not, people just wanted to know what it was. And on occasion, they would say, "Well, I just had to ask," or and that they asked for a discount, they would just they feel like that's the game they're supposed to play. But if you don't play, it's pretty embarrassing for them to just walk out.
So let me back up for a minute. We went a whole different direction with the explanations because of where we went. I personally think the first thing that you should say, no, next question.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get to a place, or let me back up. I think the first answer is no, next question. I don't discount. and we'll talk about that later when we get to marketing and things like that. And so you're absolutely right. You don't want to just start throwing up all over them as to why you charge what you do. I wasn't trying to say that. I was
No, I know.
trying to give you different, but no, it's a great point. Again, Joyce Shoemaker, the person I was talking about, she used to say, when that happened, she said, no. And then she'd say, what part of my JLB do you not understand? She was very clear, but she had this the way about her. Plus, she had this years of success and experience.
She was confident.
Yeah, and a lot of people were coming to her because somebody else said you got to use this person. That's a huge. You'll find, and Keith, folks who've been in the business for a while, you'll find as you have more experience, I think it comes up less and less with the people that have been referred. Is that a fair assessment that as you have more experience, people aren't willing to check? Whereas if you're new and you're just trying to get yourself started and gosh, I just want a listing, you feel the pressure to crack because you just want the listing.
I can't tell
Well,
you
is
what
it-
somebody asked for that.
For a discount. Oh, interesting, okay. Carol, hang on one second, Carolyn.
I had one last year, and I really wanted to go to this person's financial advisor who had suggested, we were on the phone, I had a really tricky client, very difficult, very nickel and diming, and he said something about taking reduction on listing because they were buying something more expensive and getting both sides.
Mhm.
My financial advisor suggested that and I just wanted to, can I have his name? And I'm going to ask him if he'll discount his fee.
Right.
I went with it because I knew who I was dealing with,
Right.
but it cracks me up.
Right.
The other professionals
Right.
are like, somehow we're not as worthy as they are. I
Right.
really wanted to go
Yeah.
back.
Oh, absolutely. You were going to say something about?
Well, I keep coming back not to the detail, because I do think you have a tendency to be defensive when you start to get too detailed in your response. So I always come back to really, trying to defend a percentage and that is standard. And, and so part of it is it safe? I guess what I'm asking, is it safe to say that I don't negotiate? We've determined that between Roy Wheeler and myself, we've determined that 6% is appropriate. There's a lot of deals we work on, you don't get paid. There's deals that I might get really complex. I might earn 50 cents on the dollar. Some I might make more than that. It's hard to predict. It's a journey. We're going to go down this together. We found that 6% is the right number. I'll work with you as we go through it. If there's a moment in time that I need to help, certainly I'll be there to help.
That's perfect.
Is that a fair statement? Is that
Not just fair, that's well said. Well said.
And you can also say, I don't get paid unless it closes.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think there is that element.
Yeah.
And they
Money I spent, time I've spent, all that goes for nothing.
Deals that don't go through,
Yeah.
right? Like you go out and show homes for 3 weekends. The guy buys a FISBO. I mean, who's standing up to say, here's your check?
Right.
Nobody. And so it does, I guess, with Michael, the part that I struggle with, and it's the part the industry has struggled with, is it comes back to, we have found that 6% is a number, right, that seems to work.
Except I wouldn't let yourself keep going here. I would stay in this as what, but I will say this, I don't think it's an industry standard anymore.
Yeah.
I think that different business models and things like that, I think you can honestly say that other people charge other fees, but this is what we've chosen to do.
Well, industry standard also implies
Well, then what does that
collusion
tell
to me as
Well,
well.
that's exactly
I mean,
right.
what's the standard,
It has-
Well,
Look up
you think
standard.
about the market, and some of us been in business long enough, it used to be when you sold vacant land, it was 10%.
Yeah, right.
It was 10%, and it's not new. It's very rarely.
So we're a full service brokerage.
That's right.
And that's, I love that expression.
Right.
We're full service, and that's
Yeah.
what we feel is justified and supported.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, well, I don't mean to drag us
Yeah.
down that rabbit
I
hole.
mean, just a couple other things and we'll move on. If you get in a place where you said no, blah, 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 and they keep pushing it, there are a couple things that I think are important. One, if you can go into the listing agreement and listing appointment, knowing who you're competing against, that's helpful. Because one of the things that you can do is you can go in the MLS and you can run that person's listing sold, and you can determine what their list price to sales price ratio is, right? You can ask Chris, I forget what ours is, but ours is really high, 98 point something. He's just rerun those numbers because we're doing some promotional materials. 98 point something. So just as an example, it's a simple example, but you're competing against two people. You run their numbers. You don't have to tell them what those are. You say, will you do me a favor? And ask these other agents what their list price to sales price ratio is. One, they're not going to know because nobody's ever asked them that. Two, the point you want to prove is that our list price to sales price ratio is higher, and therefore in the midst of trying to save commission, you're going to lose money. Because you might go to an agent that does it at 5% or 4.5% or whatever the case may be, thinking that you're going to save 1 or 1.5%. But in fact, because their list price to sales price ratio is 96.5, in most situations, we're going to get you 2% more than that. So you lost money. You think you saved 1.5, but in fact, you're going to lose money because why? Because if they're going to give their money away, if you ask for it, how much quicker are they going to give your money away? And one of the things that's really important in my business is being able to negotiate for you. And you need to know you've got somebody who's going to negotiate on your behalf. And if they're not going to negotiate their own money, they're certainly not going to be willing to negotiate yours. I just think that you say it in that way. And then they ask the other agents, can you give me what that is? And then, and now again, you got to make sure that it's going to work. I mean, some people may have the same, and that's a different story. But the other one that I really like, and there are lots of different things, and this is again where you go to Leading RE Institute and go into their training program. Last night was the night where they were finding out whether they were number one again this year. Last year they were number one training program in the country, and last night was the big soiree wherever it was, and where I knew we were in the top 5. I didn't check last night to see where we ended up, but point being is we got a really good online training program at your disposal for free because the company pays for it to be free. Most companies charge per whatever. You can go in there, how to deal with a difficult seller, blah, blah, and watch those things. And you get a lot of different ideas. And my degree is in counselor education. I would be, if you went into the counseling education books, I would be considered an eclectic. I like that, but I'm eclectic. Because I took a little bit of this, I took a little bit of this, and made my own sort of counseling, strategies. I was reflective, I was directive, I was consultative. I took little things with Ellis, took little things with Rogers, and I made it me, right? I couldn't do one by itself because it just wasn't me. Same thing with the real estate business, right? You figure out what works for you, what you're most comfortable saying. And one of the ones that I've always felt very comfortable saying is, let's say Sherrod's a project manager at, well, it doesn't matter, but some company. And I say, okay, Sherrod, I understand that you're asking me to reduce my commission. I've told you no. Here are the reasons why, but you're still pushing me on it. Let me ask you a question. You're the project manager for such and such. And Sherrod's going to say it. I said, you must be pretty good at what you do. Yes, I am. Great. Let me ask you a question. If your boss came to you and said, Sherrod, I've got great news for you. You just got a brand new contract. That's going to be really exciting for the company. And we've decided that you're the person running it for us. How would that make you feel? Sherrod would say, yeah, it makes me feel great. Super. That's kind of where we are right now. You're telling me that you think I'm the person to help sell your company. You're employing me to come market your house to get it sold. You've decided that I'm the right person to do it, except now, Sherrod, that makes me feel good. But how would it make you feel if I told you, and oh, by the way, because of the way we wrote the contract, we're going to have to pay you 1/3 less than we normally do. How would that make you feel? Not very good. That's what you've asked me to do here. If you're asking me to reduce it by 5% as an example, you're basically, you're the guy or gal. I definitely think you're the person that get my house sold, but I want you to work for 1/3 less. And when you do it that way, in a very nice, friendly sort of reality sort of way, they go, I never thought about it that way. And you just, kind of move on. Now, I'm not Pollyanna here. I know there are people that, are going to push and they're going to push and push. And at some point, as Caroline did in that one situation, she said, I'm going to do something different. Here's the other thing I'll tell you. Most people go, the auto default that I see in watching over and we do a pretty good job of getting full commission, but sometimes we don't. Almost every time we don't get it, it's like the list agreement doesn't say 6, obviously, because it's got reduced, but it also doesn't say 5 3/4 or 5 1/2. It says 5.
Yeah, okay.
People just immediately just give up a percent. When I believe that, okay, if I've got to give something up, Sarah's list the seller, and I said, you know what, Sarah, I don't normally do this, but because of this situation, because of where your home's located, because of the fact that, I think, we're going to get it sold pretty quickly, whatever, I'm willing to reduce my commission by 1/4 or 0.5%. And again, going back to what you've all said, most people, they're just looking to get something.
Yeah.
Right? And even before I gave up that, I'd be giving up a home warranty first. I'd be giving up a Pearl certification consultation first. We get full commission, but I really believe in the home warranty and how that can help market trend. So we're going to pay for that at closing. Now the cool thing about that is
You don't pay for it till
you
it's-
didn't pay for it. And if you're going to sell, that money never went out of your pocket, right? And you got the benefit of it being, as soon as you buy that home warranty, it's covered for the seller as well as for the buyer. It's a great thing. And people go, well, all right, that's great. I understand. And what Bob said earlier, really important, unless somebody else has something different, we'll go on. What he said earlier was really great. If we get down to one pike and something happens, I'm in a position where I might be able to help you, whereas if we reduce, I got no shot. So we get a home inspection issue, we get into whatever, there may be something I can do to make it work. But if I don't, you're on your own kind of thing. So
That works, actually, when you can say, if we come to a truly an impasse, I'm gonna try to get you the most highest dollar, best terms, but if we truly get to an impasse and there's no other way, then I'm in a position to negotiate at that point. If we've got a ready, willing, and able buyer, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of shows, okay, I see where you're coming from. That's worked. And Jim uses it a lot.
So, to add on to what Caroline just said, remember this term. Everybody feels the pain. Any of you that come to my office and we've talked about a situation and that we've done everything we can do. We got the contract in, yippee. We got the home inspection, we got some issues. We're down to $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever it is. You come into my office in that situation, you're going to hear me say, not build rapport, gain credibility, show people you carry on. You're going to say, everybody feels the pain. I'm willing to say, yeah, we'll do something as long as buyer, seller, other agent do something too. We're not reaching in our pocket and doing it all ourselves. So use the $2,000 figure for a minute. You say, we're 2,000. Everybody feels like enough's enough. We go back and we say to the other agent, do you think you can get your seller to come down $500? I'm targeting as a buyer agent now. Do you think you can get your seller down $500? And if you can, I think I can get my buyer at $500. And then how about you and I split the other? Everybody feels the pain, right?
Remind everybody about that if you're the listener.
Right, but if you're a listing agent, you have to be careful about how, because the offer of compensation is in the MLS. That can't change once a contract's being negotiated unless it's mutual. So you can't unilaterally, as the listing agent, say, I'm reducing my commission, so I need you to reduce yours. But you can say, we're in a pickle, we're $2,000 apart. I think I can get my salary to come down some. Got any ideas? Got any threes? Go fish. But seriously, because what's going to happen, I can promise you, 100% of the time, 100% of the time, the buyer agent knows what you're asking. And the buyer agent say, well, let me go back to my buyer and see what I can do. They come back and say, I can get my buyer up this much, and I'm willing to do this. Hey, that's great. All right. So, but the being is, you can't say that, buyer agent, we're reducing your commission by this much. Because the code of ethics is very clear on the fact that commissions cannot be negotiated unilaterally once a contract has been in place. And the reason is, if you hadn't have that in there, every single contract, the seller would say, okay, I'm willing to do this, but I want everybody to reduce their commission.
Well, I guess there's a difference though between a unilateral, that's like saying, okay, I'm gonna change, right? Keith is the buyer's agent. Keith, we're changing the commission structure. That's unilateral to me. It's not unilateral if I say, hey, Keith, we gotta get $1,000, you know, and I'm the listing agent.
That's exactly what you said.
Are you willing to split the baby and let's?
You don't say that.
You
You
can't
we're
say
$1,000 apart. Have you got any ideas? Because what you're saying, in essence, is you're saying you can't. What you can't say is, my seller is willing to take this deal, but only if you reduce your commission by this. Because what happens in that situation is, you've got a scenario where agents could be put in a position of contract interference, because we're not principals to the contract. Buyer and seller are. And they communicate that we're willing to sell it for this only if conditioned if that becomes a unilateral, because now you got a buyer who says, well, I want this to go through this way.
And unfortunately, they do that far too often.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. I mean,
Just have
as a seller, I used to be, you know, I would just sit there and look at those contracts, and when they were getting close, and I'd given as much as I planned on giving, and I
just had one yesterday.
I just weighed them out, because I knew at some point the realtors would kick it in.
Yeah.
Because they want to make the deal, and you know, you just get it to a reasonable point, and then you just start drumming your fingers and hang in there until somebody says, "Uncle."
Yeah. No, and that's exactly. But I'll take it one step farther. They say uncle because they're not strong enough not to. A lot of the agents, and that goes back to the whole thing we just talked about. There's too many agents out there that want to take the easy way out. They don't value what they do, and they're not willing to sit there until you blink.
I'll take.
Well, in those cases, I'd already blinked.
Yeah,
right.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying that, you know, most situations.
So I'll add one.
Sure.
They're not trained right.
Well, that's true. I mean,
No, that's you, because that's literally what happened to me. New agent, I said, who's your broker? I think you need to go talk to the broker. Then re-ask me this question. And she did, and she goes, I apologize, I should not have asked you that question.
well, good for her for apologizing and admitting it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I just felt like that was important to have that conversation. And there are all sorts of other ways, and that's why I like, again, the institute or talk, just grab coffee with Jim McVeigh or a Bird or whatever, and just say, hey, I'd love to have coffee with you, just run a couple of things by how do you handle this when you're out listening, you know, because everybody's got different, you know, I hate to say that, use the word shtick, but we've all got our way of communicating these things. You know, Keith and you have done, Carolyn, all these people that you just reach out to and chat with about things, because it's great to have different types of things in your tool belt. I can promise you that when you get into these conversations, and conversations are going a certain way, and you've had these conversations, you've got these things we've talked about, you've had conversations with agents, all of a sudden say, oh, but yeah, I'm gonna use that one right now, right? And if you don't have those, you're stuck. I mean, you're just stuck. And that's why it's really important that to make sure you've got the information from Chris that we've put out, try to put it out regularly about all the different things we're going to do to market your property to get it sold. I get the fact that you guys get a lot of stuff from us, and you forget. As an example, and hopefully you got it yesterday. An agent over the weekend said, can you get us the links so that our past clients can do reviews on Zillow and Realtor.com, because of course we can do. Did you guys get an email from Chris yesterday on that? You're supposed to send something out. Okay, I'll remind him. Just to send it out so that you have it, so that you can go back to your past clients and say, hey, would you do me a favor and go back and do a Zillow review for me. But the point of all this was, I emailed the agent on the weekend and I said, yeah, we'll make sure we get that out. But the surveys that we send out after the sale all have at the bottom of that letter the links for somebody to go to Zillow's Realtor.com, that they can type in their URL and get it done. And the agent said, oh, that must be new. Well, it's been like a year and a half. You know, it came from, I forget, it might have come from Keith and Yoda. Somebody made, during the surveys, at the end of the year surveys, somebody said, can we add those into the
It
survey?
was one of the other offices, because you were thanking them for the idea.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
I can't remember, I think it was Zion's Crossroads, maybe.
Yeah, maybe so. But anyway, it's been, and she, oh, well, that must be new. Well, no, it's not new. And she gets the surveys, you know, because I write notes on them and whatever. But I get that we get tunnel vision, and that in our job, Chris and my job, is to continually remind you. And so again, not only if you can't find the material, it should be in Dropbox. If you can't find the material, go to Chris and say, I need it, and just concentrate on memorizing it, if you will, so that, yeah, you're giving the information to the client or whatever, but that you can literally spout it off. You know, you don't have to sit there and go through the thing. You can literally spout it off. All of you have been with me when we've talked about coming to this company. And there are 5 things that I spout off in every conversation. It's name recognition, market share, training, the people, and the management. Those are the 5 things that somewhere in the conversation I'm going to make sure that I cover, because I think those are the 5 critical components of what somebody should be looking for in a real estate company. If a company doesn't have them, doesn't have at least 3 out of 5, then I would be thinking maybe that's not the best place to go. That's my opinion. But anyway, the point being is I can do that off the top of my head because I've been doing it for a long time. Does that make sense?
Last question. Do you ever change the marketing based on fee structure? So
Yes.
you do.
Yes.
And so that is a negotiable element.
Yeah.
If somebody said, okay, well, I really like you, but I don't want to pay this. I'm happy to put a sign out front, but I want a lower fee.
Yeah. Now
Tell me how that conversation
There are
goes.
two different aspects of that. One, that key full service is really, really important. We're not a 195,
Just to sell.
995, but yeah, we're not one of those companies. Never going to be that. One, which is not. It's not how we're built. Will we reduce our commission some if they don't want marketing? Yes. But only if it comes down to you want the listing, it's in a good location, you're gonna get it at a good price, you think it's gonna sell, in a good situation. But here's
I'm happy responding
right.
because I think there is legitimate. I mean, I'm happy saying that's not who we are.
Yeah.
I'm happy saying, hey, I don't want to spend my time on a property where we're not going to market it because while you may save money, I'm not saving any time. And I'm not getting any promotional support. So there's a good chance I'm going to work for free and you're going to hire somebody after the fact and they're going to get paid.
Yeah.
So no thank you.
And what I would say to that, if somebody really wants that and say, hey, there's some people out there in these flat fee companies, give it a shot for 30 days. Do that. Put a sign in the yard, put a lockbox up, see what happens. You're going to handle every showroom. As far as all the agents are going to be calling you. If that's what you want, that's great. Give it a shot. But at the end of that time frame, if it didn't work out, I'd love the opportunity to come in. Because one of the things you're going to do is you're going to differentiate yourself by offering that. The other agents are going to do whatever they can. Hey, if that's where you want to go, I totally get it. So, but I would only do it for 30 days. If you're not getting, because you're going to know pretty quickly whether this is something you're comfortable with or not. And so, because you're betting on the deal, that they get it or not. So, I mean, they're able to get a contract or not. We've got one right now where we lost the listing because somebody said they can get the house sold in 60 days. I don't believe they can. I really don't. And when we were talking about it, I said to the agent, if you want to do the 60 days, I'm fine with it because I think where it's located, you're going to get some good street signage, blah, blah, blah. And I think you're going to do a good enough job that the person will extend with you. But I don't see it selling. Again, I've been wrong before. I can be wrong again. The one on Rugby Avenue will always stick in my craw. But anyway, the point being is, it's been a couple, 3 weeks now. We'll see what happens with that. But for me, the fact that we were able to say to that person, hey, that's just not who we are. We want this to be a partnership. We want to do what we have to do, but it's a long-term process. The days on market right now is 87 or 103 or whatever it is, not 60. So all this, you want us to all firepower. You want all the marketing and all this kind of stuff, whereas I got no guarantee that 60 days from now, you're not going to tell me, hey, so much I've decided either one, I'll take it off the market because I didn't get the price, or two, I'm going to go with another company.
So I'm sorry to keep dragging
No,
this down
this is
there.
good.
It's valuable to me because these are things that I think are real life experiences.
Absolutely.
So you seem to me you have two choices at that point. Well, you probably have multiple choices. One is, and I guess I'm looking for your reaction, is you can take a longer listing and give them a right to forward. Right? Listen,
All day long.
I think this is, selling a home, it can happen in a day, it can happen in 6 months. We found 6 months is the right number. But if you don't like my service, after 60 days, you will write in there a right to cancel.
Or
do you
even better than that, in number 6 on page 3, there's things that I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to make commercially reasonable efforts to obtain a purchase for the property. I'm going to disclose potential purposes of the property, material other facts, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do these different things as it relates to advertising. Any of these things you feel like I'm not doing, then you have the right, and I'll put it in writing, that you have the right to withdraw this listing on written notice to me and my broker. And I'll tell my broker that I've given this promise, and the broker's going to.
And you're okay with that?
Absolutely. Because here's the thing, again, using it to your advantage. Somebody wants a long, other agents are looking for long-term listings. Somebody says to you, will you do it for 120 days, as an example? You said 180. Would you do it for 120? Yes, I will. And here's the way I respond to it. Yes, I will. Why? Because I'm going to do such a great job that if for whatever reason the house doesn't sell, you're going to have no reason not to extend with me. And I believe that strongly. But I'm not going to tell you to possibly lose an opportunity to list a property because they wanted 120 days or they wanted 90 days instead of 150 days or whatever. To me, that's a no-brainer. And so, yeah.
I'd rather negotiate the length than the fee.
Right.
So if somebody, you often find, right, somebody needs to be a winner.
Yeah.
And you want your client to feel like they're a winner.
Yeah.
That feels like an easier one to negotiate.
And again, you got to think about it, from my standpoint, you got to think about it with wide-angle lens. You may not take a 60 or 90-day listing when it's out in the middle of nowhere. And you have to travel out there to do whatever, and nobody's going to see it. But if you have a sign on Barracks Road for 69 days, it cost us, whatever it was, $400 a month to have our sign up across from Boar's Head, that where Oakhurst Inn has it now, and we had to pay for it. Well, in this situation, I'm having somebody put their sign in place in my name and the company. Now, you obviously risk the fact that it stays up there and it doesn't sell, and so there can be that. But the one thing is for 60 days that I'm going to do this, and I think I got a fair shot of selling it. There's other things, or somebody call me and say I'm interested in that property. If I can get a deal out of that, then it made it worthwhile. And the example I always use is the Kay Sands transaction we had. She had a property on Monticello Avenue, and it was probably one of the worst sellers in my 36-year history of being in this business. God, it was such a jerk, and especially women. Mm. And I had to get involved in that, and he would be casting milquetoast with me, because I just wanted to put up with it. But poor Kay, and she's just the sweetest person you ever can know, and he just abused her. 4 buyers have that property. She never sold it, but she had 4 sign calls and sold to 4 different buyers because of that property deal. Now, was it worth the abuse? No. Right, that's not the point. The point is we never sold that house, and yet she made good money having her sign up in that situation. So again, this whole wide angle is why am I doing this? Oh, this guy's a HR person at UVA and is moving to Cascadia and needs to sell his house. I may do some things to get that, because if I can do it well, there's a whole other revenue stream that is possible. Go ahead.
So Bob, your premise is under the assumption that you're gonna get it at the right price, the listing at the right price.
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay.
Great
You could not have it at the right price, and that throws off that formula.
I will say this, Keith, my experience is not having the right price.
Yeah.
Is to a large degree just a kiss of death.
Yeah.
You're asking to look bad. I mean, as Joe talks about the love meter, I have that clearly in my head that over time, the love meter just goes down, down, down until they're bad mouthing it.
Yeah.
You do a bad job.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to add that price is important.
So, used to be really hard when we were coming out of the recession and people were what they owed was so close to what,
Sure.
that got to be really difficult. Because they knew what they owed and that they couldn't come to the table with very much. Glad we're past.
Okay, so turning the page. We are going to turn the page here to C. This is a paragraph that most people don't even know is in here. Did you know that you got a 120-day listing and 60 days in, this owner decided to withdraw, that they owe you all your commission, the way this is written? Anybody ever read that before?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were asking a question.
If owner should withdraw the property from the market during the initial period of time or any extension thereof without written agreement from broker, or otherwise prevents broker from selling the property during the initial period of time or any extension thereof, such action shall constitute a breach of this agreement, and the owner agrees to pay broker the fee set forth in paragraph 3A as liquidated damages and not as a penalty. The fee is expressed as a percentage of the purchase price of the property, and the gross sales price for the purchase of computing the fee shall be the listing price.
Does that get crossed out very often?
Very rarely. That's what I'm saying. I don't think most people realize, and I don't think the seller, if I'm the seller, and I'm reading that, wait a minute, what happens if you don't do your job or whatever the case may be? So the reason I bring this up is, one, it's not often read. Two, this is a place where you can add some protection. But if you don't do it, you're cooked. Because not only do I not see it crossed out, but I've never seen a seller pay it. Okay, never seen. Never seen that happen, because you're going to take them to court and, it's going to cost you more money than whatever. But by making sure they understand that this is in here, I'm sure that we're not going to be issues, but I just want you to know that for some reason I go about doing everything I'm supposed to be doing and you decide to change your mind, I'm going to be, I still need to be compensated. Now, two things that you can do. One is, obviously, there's no buyer involved. So I'm going to reduce this to 3%. So right away, you're giving them.
And you would change this clause.
Right, but that's the one thing I would do, is you could put in where it says, set forth in paragraph 3A, so you go back to 3A, and it says 6%, right? In this situation, you would, put someplace that a seller's total compensation will be 3% versus 6%. But what I think works even better is that you go to number 18, other terms, paragraph 6 of 6, and you put in something to the extent of, if seller decides to withdraw from listing for any reason prior to blah, blah, they agree to pay all marketing, advertising costs, and I don't know, that would be the biggest thing. All I want to do is I want to have something in there that seller knows that we're doing things. And so you may have an idea, that it's $1,500 or whatever, but putting something in there that if they should withdraw for any reason prior to the listing expiring or the extension, they agree to pay. If it's not in there, you can ask for it afterwards.
But you've never seen it paid.
I have seen them pay in this situation.
So they're divorcing, they want to sell the house. In the process, they decide they're getting back together and they want to take off the market.
Yep.
Have you seen them pay it?
No, in that situation, I'm happy for them, you know, that they're
Military
not taking it up.
offer.
No, I'm talking about the jerks.
I got you.
I'm talking about 60 days in, you've done everything that you said you were gonna do, and they're saying you never call me, you never blah, blah. You've done it all, and therefore I want out.
You can document.
And you can document all that. That's the person I'm protecting myself from. Okay, fine, if that's the way. And so one of two things happens. One, they go, all right, well, I guess I'll just let it go the term. Great, that's all I'm asking, is give us the opportunity to sell it the way it was there. Or, yes, I'll pay the fee. At least, you know, we're getting money back for marketing expenses and things like that. And you can add in, and this is something you have to figure out, as we do the business plans, you know, I don't know if you did this in yours, Keith, but in mine, you do that thing in regards to what you think your per hour, what you are being paid per hour based on what you do. So say you got a listing and it's 20 hours of whatever, and you feel like it's 150, that's $3,000. So you would say, you know, any marketing and time expense based on $150 per hour. So you document, you know, 20 hours of this, you document this, and you get them to buy their way out of it. But in most situations, the person, well, I'm not going to do that. They're great. We just give us the time to finish it off. Sometimes it works, the fact that we get it sold. Sometimes it's expired and we lose it. You know, but the point being is, unless you put something in there clearly as to what's going to happen, you're not going to take somebody to court over that 3% of that 6% commission. It's just not worth it.
It does feel like an opportunity, maybe I'm looking at it wrong. It does feel like one of those clauses that comes and goes and nobody reads. And so and given that you're not really going to get paid if the guy's a jerk because you don't want to go to court and you haven't documented every phone call, and you know it feels like an opportunity to bring it up in the process and say, guys, I want to make sure we all understand. We're married. I'm going to put a bunch of time in. I expect to get paid. I don't want you to cancel this, but the way this is written, and this is a Roy Wheeler contract, or
No, this is a Virginia Realty. That's even better.
yeah, this is a VAR contract, and the way this is written, you don't need 6%. I think that's a little heavy-handed. I'd like to propose that we cut that back to 3%.
That's exactly what he said. He said it's so much better than I said it.
Bring it proactively, because now, again, I feel like they now trust you, as you talk about credibility and trust and all.
You said it so much better than I could have said it. I mean, I think that's exactly right. The whole reason.
Give me a little experience and I'll botch it.
Yeah, well, but the point is, the whole reason you bring that paragraph up is for that reason. You're being upfront about it. Other agents, they're going to gloss over that. They don't want to, because they don't even know how to explain it. So they're going to just gloss over it and just move on, hope the person doesn't read it. Whereas you're saying, I just want you to know what this says. And I think it's, as you said, I think it's heavy-handed. This is a statewide approved, lots of lawyers got their hands on it. Statewide approved form. I think so this is how I would like for us to move forward. It's a worst case scenario. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to do a great job, but should it happen, this is what I like to propose. And now you got everybody's agreement. It's not like after going, well, I didn't read that. I didn't understand that. They did, because you put in a number 16 or 18 and they initialed it. I think that's a great way of doing it. So I like that. That's why it's a right there.
I've never read that paragraph. I can say that, you know, I'm like all the sellers. I've never read it.
Now, you get to D, let's see if we get to D and E, and then we'll close this up. If after a valid contract for the purchase of the property is executed by the owner and a purchaser or purchasers, there's a default by such purchaser or purchasers which prevents performance of such contract, though no fault of the owner, broker agrees that the owner will not be liable for the fee, a broker, and that broker shall look to such defaulting purchaser or purchasers for compensation relating to such contract. So what that's saying in paragraph B in the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, what that's saying is if buyer says, whoops, yeah, all contingencies are removed, but I've gotten cold feet, I'm out, that we're not going to hold the seller responsible because it wasn't anything that they did wrong. But we have the right to go after that purchaser before that. Now, that doesn't mean that the seller can't go after them for specific performance or extenuating damage and stuff. All this is saying is that we're not going to be going after the commission. And then the second part, owner agrees if such default occurs, this agreement shall remain in effect until its expiration. The payment of the fee by such defaulting purchaser or purchaser shall not satisfy any obligation that may arise if after such default another valid contract. So what this says, and going back to what we just talked about, is if we can get the money from the first purchaser and we sell it again, well, they didn't have to pay the money on the first side. They are paying it for the second side. Now, you may be fine with that, but that may be another place where you say, look, I got X amount for somebody, but this is a whole new deal. We're starting from scratch, and so this agreement's, that's what this is saying. That even though I got the money from the other purchaser, we started from square one, 3 days in effect. You know, I doubled it, but I doubled it because I took a lot of effort here, and then I had to start over and do it all over again.
Yeah.
So that's what that paragraph says, okay? Everybody with me? E, if after a valid contract for the purchase of the property is executed by the owner and a purchaser purchases, there's a default by the owner, so now this is on the seller, which prevents performance of such contract through no fault of the broker, or if owner fails to fully perform the obligations of owner set forth herein, the owner shall be liable to broker for the fee as compensation for its services hereunder, and the reasonable attorney's fees and expenses incurred by the broker, if any, in enforcing the terms and conditions hereof. So, commission, and the key here is attorney's fees. Because now I can go after you, and if I win, you're responsible to the commission, and I don't have, now there's reason to go out and, talk to an attorney and whatever, because I really believe that we're in our right to get it. Gives us the right to get an attorney, and if we win, the agreement says that we get that, that's going to be taken care of as well. Okay, so where did I stop? Herein. The owner shall be liable to broker for the fee as compensation for its service herein and the reasonable, okay, you're up. In any action brought by broker or owner under this agreement, the prevailing party or parties in such action shall be entitled to receive from the non-prevailing party or parties jointly and separately, in addition to any other damages or awards, reasonable attorney's fees and costs expended or incurred in prosecuting or defending such action. So either way, if you lose, you're saying, it's saying that the owner can get their money back. But I just think these 3 paragraphs are not to be sort of short shrifted. I think you're the professional. I want you to understand what you're signing, right? And one of the things that you can do if you know that you're going to get the listing, that it's a referral and people want you to come over tomorrow night and list their property, is you can send this to them in advance. Yep. And say, I'm sending you this agreement so that you can read through it, so that if you have any questions, make notes on it, whatever. If any questions, we can talk about this. I want to enter into this with you understanding what your responsibilities are, what my responsibilities are, so that there's never any, I never want you to say I didn't understand something. I never want you to say you didn't explain that to me. And by just doing that, I think not all say, but in a major percentage of times, you will have done something no other agent's doing. And I think that could be the difference between you getting a listing or not getting a listing, because you handled it professionally, you explained it, you made sure they understood what the document said, versus somebody just kind of throwing it in front of them and saying, and I'm being a little bit, exaggerated, but sign here, So, thoughts, questions about those?
So you experienced agents, I'm not trying to limit, I know Keith, you guys have done a lot of business. You go walking through paragraph by paragraph. I mean,
I do so much of it electronically, so that's that sending it ahead, making sure they read it thoroughly, call with questions, need clarification.
Yeah, so, because it does feel,
Usually by this point, you've built up your
agency
trust.
relationship, I'm thinking that can't, I haven't read it lately, but that can't be fun, reading through the agency relationship.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out exactly when you would do it and how in depth you do it. I like the idea of sending it to them, and this a legal document?
Yeah, well, sometimes that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You gotta know who you're dealing with.
I would be, I mean, not that I've done a ton of deals, but I've done a few. I would just be very familiar yourself with it, but it would not be, and I've dealt in other businesses where we did a lot of contracts and stuff. I would not be going through it line by line myself. I would be fully abreast of it. I would be able to dismiss things kind of that they're not of concern, but like these, I think, if somebody asked about them, I'd want to be able to confidently go through it.
Two things. One, stealing Keith's line that he talks about all the time is knowing when he was 18 years old, just show you what I do listen to. That when he was 18 years old, you have to explain things the way somebody else will be able to understand it. So many times layman's terms and things we talk and people just kind of nod because they don't want to say that they didn't get it. So in my opinion, the way I would explain it, I want to be able to understand what this says so I can explain it in layman's terms and in Cliff Note version. Yeah, what were you going to say?
No.
The second thing is, as it relates to this, so one, layman's terms. As far as the agency relationship, there's a great form that we have called how we do business.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go. If you hand them that one pager that talks about standard agency and whatever, you can say, and you understand what that says. That's what I would use. I would explain it that way. What agency relationship is this page right here. And you don't have to go line by what this is talking about is the fact that by you signing this, you've agreed that I'm going to exclusively represent you as the seller, unless something changes. Something changes would be if another wheeler agent should bring us a contract. We're going to go for what's called a standard agent, where I'm representing you as a seller, and such from X company is representing the buyer, to what is called designated representation. But the good news, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is that doesn't change anything. I'm still 100% representing you. The agent for a wheeler is 100% representing the buyer, and our broker goes into the confessional and becomes the dual agent.
I literally had to explain that to a lawyer yesterday. That's a real estate lawyer.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's amazing what real estate lawyers don't know. We had a situation just this past week where there's something on a property. It doesn't have anything to do with the property, it has to do with the road. So if you understand what agency again, material defect, what are we responsible for?
What we know.
What we know, what we apply as far as the property. Four corners, right? So it's a really awkward scenario because within the law of agency, we're only responsible for what's in the four corners. It's up to other people to find out what's outside the four corners, whether it's a garbage dump going to be put in behind the place or a new road or whatever the case may be. And so it is definitely a gray area. And I said,
Even a buyer, excuse me for interrupting.
I'm talking about the listing agent.
Okay, the listing agent, not the buyer's agent.
No.
They have responsibilities for the time.
Sure, should be at least telling their buyers, we need to, understand what this is, listing agent. I said, what did the attorney say? The listing agent said, I think, what did he say? He said, I think you should just talk to your broker. And I'm going, wait a minute. I am not the real estate attorney. I understand. I teach it. So thankfully I can have a pretty good idea that I know what I'm talking about. But I said, I went back to the agent. Now that I think about it, I haven't heard back from her. I said, I want you to go back to that attorney with the situation that we have. And I want you to turn the table on him. And I want you to say, if a buyer comes to you tomorrow, having bought this house, and as it relates to the road, how would you represent them? Because if that changes everything, now I'm going to train. Okay, I understand that we're asking you for the start seven, but are we on solid ground that you would say to that person you have no cause? And if not, the point being is that one was quicksand, in my opinion, because we were well within our rights, but at the same time, I could see this thing coming back to bite me on my butt real hard.
Private road or public road?
I don't want to get into any more of that. But anyway, but the point being is, I'm amazed how many times a real estate attorney doesn't know. And I'm not surprised about that one, that they didn't understand. I mean, even in Tucker's Tips or Hope or Larry, sometimes you bring them questions and I realize they don't know the contract. You're asking a question and they're like, they don't know what's in that contract.
My experience, and both those guys, Larry in particular is a dear friend of mine,
Yep.
and I love him and respect him, is that, that the closing process is such a churn, and they manage at such volumes because the fees are pretty small and to make the kind of money they want to make. And they view litigation as really a separate profession.
That's exactly right.
They don't think of the world, and thankfully, right? What we love, I met Larry through a realtor and used him for years, and one of the things I liked is he wasn't litigious. He was, okay, let's figure this out, let's come together. I want to solve the problem, I want the transaction to conclude, move forward. And that's what you want.
Yeah.
And that's, and I think the litigator, right, he's peeling this apart to try to figure out who he's gonna hang him.
And the only paragraph that they are familiar with, or several paragraphs they're familiar with, is if they've had to be in a place where they've had to peel back the onion to what this is. They're not specific to the contract because they don't have to, because the closing process is more about making sure all the boxes are checked, right? And the I's and dotted are crossed, boom, 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 we're all
Well, you got
done.
the title company that's weighing in to solve the four corner issue. You got the lender who's got all his RESPA requirements, whatever the current ones are. And they're really just the traffic.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can tell you.
The other day, I still don't quite understand that stuff, but listen,
Because I'm dealing with a dual on this property up on that side. And I still
call because my friends the hair guy at the Stars here, and captures you gets in here. And what you're saying, he's a very nice guy. But he said he does a lot of things. He said he worked with Eric.
as a buyer's agent.
I said, but Eric told me definitely doing weddings for years. He goes, oh, that's true.
Yeah, who maintains the road, is there agreement, is it VDOT, is it not, it's not, is there a road maintenance agreement amongst the neighbors?
Yeah, I had a commercial buyer, I didn't really care.
Right.
But if you had a residential buyer, I guess you'd write it.
Right, sure. Yeah.
Satisfied.
Well, I mean,
Resolving.
I'm sure the reason he's consciously doing stuff elsewhere is because he's, he'll get paid more.
Oh, wait, let me close this out.
Yeah.
I mean, generally in time and all that stuff.
Hey, Yona. Bye, Yona.
Yes, and then he said, yeah, I know, guys, I'm around.